I've worked with a lot of clients over the years that have received an inheritance. One of the biggest hassles that I regularly see when financial assets are being split, especially between multiple beneficiaries, is dealing with small directly held stock positions. So today I just want to show you what to look for and how you can clean this up in your own situation, which will make the administration and distribution of your own estate much simpler. Now let me start by showing you what to look for, then I'll talk about why these things can be such a hassle. So I would estimate about half the time that one of my clients comes to me and says, hey, my last surviving parent just died. We're in the process of splitting up their financial accounts. In amongst the things they send to me will be an account statement that looks something like this. Now, what I want to point out here is it'll be coming from a company called Computershare, which is kind of the biggest firm in managing directly held stock accounts. Okay, a little bit less commonly, I'll see an account statement from this EQ Shareowner Servcices. What these both generally represent, again, are directly held stock positions. And it's not even really that important that you understand what that means, but let me talk about who typically obtains these types of holdings. Most commonly, it's people that usually had worked for some large public company at some point in their career and participated in a stock purchase program. So they were buying company stock, or maybe they were even given company stock as part of their overall compensation. Now, next, I just want to talk a little bit about why these things can be such a pain in the butt when dealing with, especially when they're being split across multiple beneficiaries. Now, the reason these directly held stock positions can be such a hassle to deal with is really twofold. Number one, the overwhelming majority of what I see is relatively small dollar value. So typically maybe in the thousands, and in some cases even less than $1,000. Number two is oftentimes the administrative process that firms like Computershare make you go through to deal with these things is burdensome. Just for example, sometimes stocks are held in certificate form, so Computershare will say, we're not going to do anything. You can't do anything until you find the original stock certificate. Well, guess what? A lot of times families can't find the stock certificate. So there's a whole separate process you have to go through to obtain a new one. And likewise, sometimes firms like Computershare, actually frequently, will make you get what's known as a Medallion Signature Guarantee. This is like a super duper duper notarized signature, which is not always easy to get. So my point is, you marry these two things. You have a small account. I mean, imagine an account, especially that's under $1,000 and it's maybe being split 2, 3, 4 ways, which is going to require hours of time in, jumping through all these hoops to split up. Sometimes the cost of just going through the process itself ends up being more than the account value that's ultimately going to be received. Now, the good news is if you own directly held stock and you want to simplify your situation to avoid all the things I was just talking about is, you got two simple choices. Either A, transfer the stock into a brokerage account where it's much more easily managed, or B, sell it. Okay, call up the transfer agent and say, sell the stock and send me a check. Now, obviously, you got to think about capital gains, but kind of my point of this whole video is oftentimes these are relatively small positions, and that's why people don't deal with them to begin with, because they're like, I got some MetLife stock that I've held for 30 years and it's only worth $1,000 or something. I'm just not going to do anything about it. But then what ends up happening is your kids have to deal with it when you're gone. And my point was, oftentimes just the time involved in cleaning up these little accounts, jumping through all those hoops, can be more than the account value itself. So if there's one thing you can do to simplify your estate, it's clean up these little accounts, specifically directly held stock.